lot to do this morning. I have a lot to do today. But here I am having this conversation because yesterday I started Love is Blind season 5. I got 2 episodes under my belt and I have things to say. And I'm infuriated. So let's get started. So we are very early on in the season 5 journey for me. I'm only 2 episodes in. And I feel like for me, it's kind of weird. We have this situation where not everybody, hey, Salem, is gonna stand out. In fact, at the end of the first Salem. At the end of the first episode, I was like I talked to my wife. So she's watching it, but in Kentucky, right? And she was like, "What about the little firefighter?" And I was like, "Firefighter? I don't know what you're talking about." That's the puppy. I'm like, "Firefighter? I don't know what you're talking about." And she's like, "Yeah, the firefighter." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking. I do not know what you're talking about." And I was like, maybe they're in episode 2. And she was like, no, they're in episode 1. And I was like, I don't think so. She was correct. They just did not. They were like, not. It was JP who, the only thing I remember from JP and Taylor in the first episode was that they were doing push-ups. She was like, do enough push-ups for my name, like one for every letter of my name. And he spelled her name wrong. He was like Taylar. It's like, she was like, what? And then he was like, you do me. And she was like, okay, JP, just two push-ups. Anyway, cute, whatever. I'm not saying that they're not. They actually seem very well matched. And at the end of the second episode, which is where I'm at, they are getting all dressed up because they are engaged and they're about to meet in person. So that's fun. You get a cute little scene of her practicing meeting him with the girls and the girl dorms or whatever. So, but unfortunately at this point, only certain people are going to kind of stick out. Now, I took videos. I was livid when Uche and Aayliah, I believe her name is, when they were having their conversation and Uche asked her if she had ever cheated. Now, just a side note, I'm rough on names. I'm doing my best. But Uche is a name that I know because there was a female named Uche on Are You the One of the seasons. She wound up with a guy named Clinton, I believe. And I think as of the last time I looked into it, they are still together. They were a cute little couple. So there's that. Actually, I'm going to Google it now. No, I'm not. I don't know where my phone is. Never mind. Anyway, Uche and Aayliah are having a conversation. They have hit it off. I'm not impressed with him. He has a flat affect that seems very condescending. And then you remember he's a lawyer and this is going to be so judgy. But I feel like he is being a little bit condescending. I think that he feels a little smarter and a little like he has an edge. So I don't know. I don't appreciate the way he's speaking to her. But anyway, Uche goes into this conversation with Aayliah. Basically, they start the conversation, and I believe he's telling her something like, there's no way I don't leave with you. You're the girl. You're amazing. You're the girl, right? And he's really hyping her up. And she's, taking it in. And then they start to get into a conversation where Uche is like, have you ever cheated? And Aayliah says yes. She has cheated. Instantly, Uche changes. He is now the hurt boyfriend. He is the man who was cheated on himself. He is just, and he's ready. And he's like, well, how? Why? And you can tell by his face, there's no answer that's going to satisfy him. Which I can understand asking, do you have this in your history? But she doesn't owe you all of the ins and outs. And when she gives them to him, they're not good enough. He just uses them to further break her down. So he's like, why? And she says it was over and I have needs and I had communicated. And he's like, well, you should have broke up with him. Okay, I'm sure she fucking knows that, bro. Like, I am sure she has figured that out by now. She's clearly upset talking to you about it. Then she's like, well, it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago isn't that long ago. How do I know you won't cheat on me? Like, I mean, he is just being so ugly. And then he says, did you tell him? Which, again, not your business. She says no. Why hurt the man? Like, the cheating was done. She knew the relationship was over. Why hurt him? Oh, it wasn't about him. It was about you. And he just, like, needles her until she's like, okay, yeah, maybe it was. And you can see this girl get lost in her shame and in her emotions, and just she's stunned by the way that he's going after her. And all I can think is that if they were in person, he would have been the same way, but even more intimidating. And because he was so cold, his face was cold, he was ugly and gross. And I was like, oh, hell no. This man is showing you something about himself. This is how he's going to handle conflict. This is how he's going to go after you and treat you. Like, no. No, 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 no. Right? Anyway, so at the end of the conversation, when he has thoroughly, like, broken her completely down, she's like, okay. And she leaves the room. And then he does what I think his process was. Like, so he lifted her by telling her, you're the girl, I'm never leaving without you. Then he asked her a question that was clearly going to be a sensitive topic, and, like, it gave him an edge. He beat her down. And then after he, like, really rubbed her nose in it and really kind of shamed her and broke her down, he was like, well, I guess you told me. That's important. And I think his goal there was to, like, give her just enough to lift her back up just a little bit, so she'd be so grateful. Like, oh my God, like, you're right. I'm this terrible person. You just pointed it out to me. You just displayed how awful I am. And yet you're willing to forgive me because at least I told you the truth. Like, I think that was the game plan, but she left the room. And when he started to say, well, at least you told me, she was already gone. And I think in that moment, he was like, I kind of messed that up. Like, I should have reeled her in a little bit earlier. He leaves. I do apologize about the noise level. The cats are wild, but the puppy is learning to like entertain himself, and he has a toy, and he's doing a good job, but he's being very noisy. You see a scene with him and the other guys, and he's like, I mean, all the things lined up, but then, I asked her this question and it didn't line up, and I just was so unexpected. And the guy's like, well, can you forgive her? Can he forgive her? There's nothing for him to forgive. She didn't cheat on him. They're not even in an actual relationship yet. Like, there is nothing. And the idea that this is how he's acting now, oh no. No. I was so upset. I was furious. And then I was like, this guy's going to reel her back in. I'm so upset. She deserves better. None of the women should have to deal with him being that toxic about things like that. Now, she has conversations where Lydia, I think she's from Puerto Rico, is like, no, girl, he's telling you something about himself. This is not about you. Like, you're strong, you're good. And I'm like, yes, hear those words. Keep them in your heart. Fast forward, they meet up again, and he pulls the whole, like, first of all, he doesn't go straight to apologizing. He doesn't go straight to his whole, like, excuse that we're going to get into. The first thing he does is she says, like, I don't know how I will feel going forward. Like, how do I tell you things if this is how you react? And she kind of paraphrases, almost quotes him with the whole 2 years ago isn't that long ago, and how can I know you won't do it to me kind of thing. And he says, did I say that? Yes, you did. And I think that a weaker-minded person, or a person who had really thoroughly been really screwed up, or had she been in person and seen his face, which was projecting, I didn't say that, she would have questioned herself. But they're not in person. And all she has is her experience in that bubble. And she's like, yes, you said that. And he switches gears and goes, well, that's not what I meant. I apologize if that's how it came across. That is what you said. And you are a lawyer. You choose your words. You know what you're saying. So then he kind of goes like, well, the focus is like, well, you did tell me and you didn't have to. And like, if you're saying you changed, like, I'm going to give you this grace. It's not for you to give. She's a grown-ass woman, bro. Like, you are out of your mind. Then he says, I've been cheated on, and that's where it came from. Okay. So here's a thought. Okay. I get it. We all have things that are going to trigger us. I get it. But what's not okay is for her to have to deal with toxic behavior because you were triggered. Not okay. You are now on a dating show. You didn't accidentally meet a girl in a coffee shop organically. Like, you're not like in a situation where it's like, oh, love found me and I didn't know and I wasn't ready, but I want to embrace this opportunity. No, you sought out a dating show, which means you knew you were putting yourself in a situation to date multiple women, to ask questions like, have you ever cheated? To fall in love with somebody who has a different background than you might know, because it's Love is Blind. You don't get to know everything up front. Like, all of these things are like going to happen. So you need to have yourself handled. Doesn't mean you don't get to get triggered. It means that you need to be able to put yourself in a timeout, bro. That's all I'm saying. Okay. And then he's like, I mean, if we were to have a relationship and go forward, do you not think that these kind of conflicts wouldn't happen? Girl, flashing red flag. He's telling you this is going to happen again. This is how I deal with conflicts. So her answer should have been something like, I should hope not. I hope that we have a healthier way of dealing with conflict, because that wasn't it, bro. But that's like, she's like, I guess, because he is now trying to just say like, well, it's just, it's a growing, it's learning each other. No, it was gross. It was uncalled for. It was ugly. He was being ugly. Like, he was personally the one cheated on. And then to tell her that 2 years isn't enough time to change, to act like people can't immediately learn from mistakes. Are you out of your freaking mind? The answer is yes, you are. In this moment, sir, out of your mind. I was livid. I am still livid. I'm livid. Speaking of livid, let's talk about Johnie and Izzy and Chris. Chris is a perfectly nice guy. He actually opens up to Johnie about being taken advantage of at a young age and how he lost his virginity. I think that this is an important conversation. I think that it is awesome that he could like bring this up. Y'all, hold on. It's awesome that we are having this conversation. I think that more guys need to talk about it, because there is this misconception that like guys can't be taken advantage of, which is absolutely not true. I think he talked about something that was kind of coercive advantage, and also just in general, it wasn't okay. And I think it's beautiful that he opened up to her about it. I think it's a good conversation to be had across the board. I do sometimes wonder though, because having Chris have this moment where he's talking to Johnie and he says, I've never told anybody this and I just feel comfortable with you, is an interesting note on the fact that this is reality TV. So as comfortable as you feel with Johnie, you're not sharing in this isolated bubble where you're not even having to look the person in the eye. You are sharing in an isolated bubble where you don't even have to look at the person in the eye and all of the world for it to be streamed millions of times. And that is an interesting thing, because we've heard on this, actually about Love is Blind in particular, there have been some conversations around the filming and the living conditions. They say like, we didn't get to sleep a lot, we don't get to eat a lot, it's a grueling schedule. There have been participants who have said those things. And so it's just an interesting thing, like, if that's what's happening, despite the fact that they're volunteering to go, that is causing them to have even more of a like disconnect from reality when they are sharing these things that are very intimate and very personal. And it's just a thought like, ooh, I don't know. Do you regret later saying those things? And possibly he won't. Possibly he'll be like, no, it was like, would I have chosen it? Maybe not, but it opened up the door to all these conversations that are so important. But JP also has a moment where he's talking about his childhood, and he says that he is like, that it was a rough childhood, that his mom had a lot of anger towards his sisters and stuff like that. And again, he talks about how he's healed past it and how he doesn't like have like a lot of it was just hard, but he's not still mad or anything like that. But it is interesting because you wonder, like, would you have shared that with all of society at any other time? You know what I mean? Like, it's just an interesting thing. So anyway, Chris, who is a very nice guy, is very into Johnie, who is a broken girl. She talks about how her own mother was like, maybe you don't need a relationship. She talks about all of these terrible, like how she just has a bad history. And she seems very self-aware, which is like step one. She seems like she's done a lot of work, which is step two. Okay, there is a certain conversation to be had around, if you're not making the best dating decisions, is it the best thought to go on a reality TV show? I don't know. I can't answer that. I mean, my inclination would be to say no, but I guess we'll see, right? What we do know is that she is talking to Izzy, and that it seems to be going all right. Izzy pulls what we have seen so many of these people do, because it has happened quite often. So if you weren't expecting it, you might not have seen the other 4 seasons. Izzy basically is having a conversation with Johnie, and he is kind of inadvertently putting a little bit of pressure for her to choose him. Prioritize me. Choose me. He says, if it's me, say something. I want to be wanted. I want somebody who's going to tell me they're all in. I want to be chosen. All of those kind of things. And he's basically saying, like, I have multiple connections. I'm just waiting to hear that I'm the one. And some version of this conversation has happened, like I said, in so many different, like, iterations on this show. And we know what's about to happen, I think. So Johnie is like, it is you. Like, I do choose you. I have said something. And she follows this up by going to talk to Chris, who is her number 2. Now, she, in a lot of ways, is like, Chris is safe. Chris is expected. I would like to say here, if you have repeatedly made bad decisions, and you know that, and you have repeatedly done things that maybe weren't the best, and you've done it, then maybe looking at things and going, I should do something different. Maybe safe is smart. Maybe reliable and dependable isn't boring. Maybe it's beautiful. Maybe we can move forward in a different direction, kind of thing. So anyway, she goes to Chris and basically cuts off Chris, who has a very emotional reaction in the men's pod area, like communal living area. And then she meets with Izzy, and she tells him, like, oh yeah, I broke off my number 2. He's like, yeah, I heard. She's like, you heard? Yeah, I wasn't there to witness it. Witness it? And so he kind of starts spinning her head. But there's already a shift in his energy in that moment, because he now knows he's winning. He got what he wanted. She chose him. He never actually told her, I'm going to stop talking to other people. I don't believe. I think he was pretty vague. Like, he implied you're the girl, but didn't say, like, I'm choosing you 100%. I'm down no matter what. He wanted her to say that to him. So I feel like there was a shift from there. Like, he already felt like, now I have a little more room to take my time and figure things out, because I know you broke up. He felt like he had a wider berth, I guess. So he kind of has a little bit of a weirdness. Then they start to talk, and she tells him that, like, the only person she really believes that she loved, the person she considers her only love, died from an overdose, and that her husband was kind of a rebound. And she just opens up to Izzy about all of this, and we can see what she cannot, which is him, like, acting like this is the most devastating thing he's ever heard. He can't believe it. He's in shock. He's utterly horrified. He doesn't know. Like, he just doesn't know. He just doesn't know. And this girl, like, pours it all out, and he's just like, I don't know. I need to process. you need to. And she's like, well, I'd like you to stay and talk. I'd like to like work through. And he's just like, I need a process. It's devastating. It's kind of ugly. Now, I'm not faulting Izzy for a reaction, but I do feel like in this situation, he pushed and pushed and pushed for her to isolate herself from her other connections, and then isolated her further by pulling away and making it to where she opened up all of this and has nobody to go to with it, because he kind of was like, I need a process by. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. Izzy is talking to a blonde named Stacy. Stacy kind of gives me like Micah vibes from last season. Not directly, but kind of. Anyway, Stacy's very basically like, I'll have the man I want. It'll be fine. When Izzy wants to get a little deeper and be more vulnerable, she's like, I don't want to. I'm not going to force myself. Like, I don't want you thinking I can't get deep. I just find that this is fun. And he's basically verbalizing like, I want more. And she's going like, this is what you get. And I think this is light and fun. And the number one thing for me is to have fun with somebody. Now, we've seen other people not be able to get vulnerable, and it never really works out well, but here we are. Now, so she's kind of like around, like just there. I think that Izzy was between her and Johnie. He actually had been talking to Lydia, who we'll get to in a second, but like he cut that off. I think that's good, because when Lydia was talking to him, I think she kind of spotted competition and was like geared for it and like aiming for it and stuff, and was like, sometimes it's a little bit questionable whether or not they're really into the person, or it's almost like there's this competition around that person, so I want them more. Which I think is a natural thing that happens. I don't think it's a conscious decision, just 90% of the time. Anyway, so yeah, Stacy's around, and we get a clip of Johnie being like, I don't know, he needs to process and everything else. But then she's like, if he picks her, he'll regret it, and I know he'll know that's a mistake. And it's almost like, okay, we need to stop. Like, look, we all entered into this knowing that we were going to date. I love that I'm saying we. Yeah. We were going to date people that were going to be dating people. That was going to happen. So we need to not be focused at all on the relationships of other people and just on. Because if we're focusing on putting any kind of energy on the relationships of other people, we are doing a disservice to ourselves, right? That's where we're at. Okay. Personally, I feel like Johnie and Chris are a good match that would be better than Izzy and Johnie. That's how I feel. I don't think that Izzy and Johnie are good. My jury's out on if Izzy's going to be good with anybody in this situation. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like Uche wouldn't be good for anybody in this situation. He has a bit of like toxicity where he needs to figure it out. And this particular competitive, everybody's dating everybody situation, I don't think is going to bring out the best in him. And I might feel the same about Izzy. I'm not sure yet. Jury is out. Now, moving from Izzy and the situation he's in with the two girls he's still talking to, we have Lydia, who was talking to Izzy. She was very into him. She was also talking to Milton. Milton, she pretty much had a lot in common with. She's a geologist. He's really into that. I think he's an engineer. But they have like a sciencey kind of conversation where she keeps going, you're such a nerd, you're such a nerd, you're such a nerd. And it's kind of funny to see that, because like it's a conversation y'all are both having. You understand what he's saying. You interact with it. You know it. Y'all are coming from the same kind of sphere. So for you to be like, you're such a nerd, and be almost like turned off by it is kind of weird. To me, maybe not. Like if you're in that environment all the time, you're like, I don't want one of those guys. I get it, but just saying. I thought it was fun. Milton is young. He seems mature for his age, but he is young. And we've seen a lot of this play out as well, where people are like, you're so young. And they're like, but I'm not, I'm so grown. But then real life happens, and it's like, you are actually still young. And in Milton's case in particular, he talks about a rough childhood that caused him to mature past his age. Now, I like Milton. I actually think he could be a good match for whoever picks him if they can be open and kind with him. I like him. And I think that, but I also think it's normal when you live a life that forces you to grow up fast, to have this feeling of adultness and growth around you. And as you actually enter the adult world fully and completely, and adult relationships, and have children and everything else, you start to realize that despite your experiences and the feeling and belief of being grown past your years, you kind of aren't. And so there's a different type of healing and growing that has to happen. And the wrong person will point to that and say, see, you weren't ready, or see, you're not mature enough, when actually everybody has growth that has to happen. It just looks different for people. So I actually really like Milton. I think he's kind. He seems gentle and sweet and sincere. And I am sad because I think he's going to be Lydia's second. Like, she openly says, like, I wouldn't even have like talked to you about this yesterday. You were completely off the table because of your age, because she's 30. But because Izzy broke up with her, she's circling back. And not that second chances can't work out. Hello, Zach. But I just think, I don't know how sincere she is in this second chance. And that worries me. And again, I want to say that when I question sincerity, I'm not questioning it like a logical, like, I think this is some kind of plot and this person is going into something being ugly. I'm saying they are in this environment where they're like being pushed to seek. And so when one thing doesn't work out, I am pushing myself to seek. And I question whether that will translate to a fair shot for him in the real world, if that makes sense. Anyway, those are the kind of the big ones that I see right now. I will talk about other couples as we get into it, but that's where we're at. I'm anticipating a really good connection for JP and Taylor. Like, I think they're going to like each other when they see each other. And I am sadly anticipating some dumpster fires when we start to meet all the couples and mingle. That's just never good for us in these weird entanglements. Who are you most interested in, and what are your thoughts on the whole Uche and Aayliah thing, and everybody else? I'm interested. I want to know. I enjoy interacting, and I can't wait to watch a couple more shows and make another video.